What's up, Zach here, and today I've got one of the most insane looking basketball shoes that I can really remember that's come across my desk, and that is the Under Armour Flow Future X Elite. And yeah, there is just a lot to say about them. Let's get into it. And a huge thanks to Under Armour for sending me a pair of these to check out. However, I'm under no obligation to make a video. This video is by no means sponsored, and all opinions, good, bad, and indifferent, as always, are all my own. Now, probably the first thing that strikes you about the Elites is, obviously the uppers. They are a giant, chunky knit upper, which is what Under Armour calls its IntelliKnit upper. Now, what it feels like is, it feels like a chunky knit sweater. If you look at it on the microscope, it looks like a chunky knit sweater, but it feels like more like the polyester elastane material, like in Under Armour's Heat Gear, those types of materials. But it has the substance of a chunky knit sweater. Now, when you take the laces out, you can't even see the lace eyelets, and that's because they lay pretty horizontal on both sides of the shoe, and because the tongue in them is non-existent, right? It's a slipper tongue shoe. You would think that the laces would really dig into your foot, especially if you're a higher arch player. However, the shoelaces on these are so buttery soft and pretty wide that they really give no irritation whatsoever. I was completely shocked. I thought they were gonna really hurt me, and really had no issues. Also had no issues with entry into the shoe, but because they have these giant pads around Kager's triangle or both sides of your Achilles tendon, there really was no slippage either. It was kind of crazy. The one thing is though, these laces are so long, so I kind of had to double knot them and then knot them back around the finger hold here on the anterior aspect of the ankle collar. So just watch out for that. You might want to either cut them down or do something for there. The one thing I'll say that really threw me for a loop on the Elites though was the initial, step in and then break in comfort of the uppers. In the forefoot, it has this suture tape backing, as well as in the midfoot, but you really don't feel that. In the forefoot, that's pretty stiff when you first put it on. And when I first had them on, whenever I kind of go to stop really hard, my toes would hit into that. It was not all that comfortable. Now, after maybe, I don't know, an hour in these, maybe not even, it completely broke in, felt pretty buttery, no problems at all. And kind of once I started breaking in the flow just a little bit. But in the beginning, you might just want to have 2 socks on these. Just get some padding around your forefoot just to get you through that initial break-in, because once they do break in, it is a very nice form-fitting comfort on them, really no issues. Now, speaking of having no issues, if you look at the breathability tests on these things, only heated up 82.2 degrees with the heat gun, and that really was borne out with the breathability mapping of these, where fog was just blowing out of this thing like crazy. I even noticed with the heat gun, when I have my hand over top of it, a lot of times sometimes the top is cold to the touch because the shoe is holding on to so much heat. My hand was like getting really hot, like uncomfortably hot when I had it on top of this. So in terms of breathable shoes, like the Spawn Flotro was one of the least breathable. This one, the most breathable basketball shoe out there. So pretty crazy how it went from that to this in the Under Armour line. But that just shows you with how these are knit together, they're number one, incredibly flexible and flowing, but also number 2, incredibly breathable, even though looking on the microscope, it does look like a giant Christmas sweater. On the upper durability test, 10 seconds highest grit sandpaper. I mean, yeah, the burr does start to make a hole in this. It is a knit upper. So remember, with the flow foam on it, this is meant for indoor courts. I think because the uppers are so malleable and they move so well with you, I still think they'll last fine in terms of blunt trauma to your foot moving in and out. Remember, there's so much surface area. That tension that your foot is creating in the knit is going to get spread across the knit. So to blunt trauma, I think it's absolutely fine. To, abrasion on an outdoor court, yeah, that and the flow are going to start wearing down. But like I said, it is an indoor shoe. But I think the real insanity of the Elites comes in the midsole. Now, it is a dual density flow foam midsole setup and a shank that goes from the anterior part of the rear foot all the way into the forefoot. Got a shank score of 0.3 because it does cross 2 zones, presence of a shank. Thing is though, the stack of flow foam in the heel is 2.9 centimeters. Now, flow foam feels super elastic and bouncy, very lively. And in this one, you're getting a whole lot of it. But what I thought was a pretty cool design choice was, number 1, you get a really stiff heel counter on these, which you really need because this is an elastic knit upper. It's really flexible, right? Number 2 though, the flow design of it, right? The shape of it is just, you know, like a hovercraft. It's super bulky and wide on both sides. You get compression on the lateral side, and it's really bulky on the medial side, right? Compression on the lateral side, a little bit more forgiveness, bulk on the medial side for more push off. And then from the rear foot, you can just see it is just a really wide set flow design. And when you put your foot in it, it just feels like it's riding up both sides of you, almost like your foot is like sitting in a cloud like that. That's the only sensation I can really think, you know, a really dense flow foam cloud, but that's what it feels like, or like in the middle of a hovercraft. It just feels super secure for a shoe that, you know, you would think doesn't because of the really flexible uppers. But to me, this was every bit as stable as the shoe as the Curry 11 for sure, just because of how the flow sits. Now, if you look at this on the bounce height test, got 34 centimeters in the heel, 35 in the forefoot, which is on the upper end of average. I have noticed with the dual density flow setups in these that it doesn't get as crazy of a bounce because you have a little bit softer flow on the outside and then the more dense flow, you know, in the midfoot of the shoe. I think that's also just a little more support for sure. But it's what happens when you activate this shank, right? I mean, the thing is a springboard. I mean, this stuff is crazy. So that's what you're getting these for. If you're getting the flow foam shoes and you want it for bounce, you're getting it for putting energy into the shank and getting all of that diving board effect from that shank. So in terms of the launch of these, it's pretty much the same as most other flow shoes. And getting into the outsole tread, or in this case, the outsole foam, it is that standard flow foam stamp you get, which is like a diamond pattern in the forefoot, kind of melds itself into these two pivot points, which are circular. And then the rear foot, it's more of like a rippling pattern, right? That's just more like razor type patterns in the rear foot. This is pretty much the same as most other flow shoes. On the grip test ramp, it slipped at 46 centimeters, the same as all the other flow shoes I've tested on there. And you know, on court, it's absolutely silent. Like I said, on these, you will want to be wiping them down for dust. You know, that's the one thing that's going to create that barrier. Because remember, these work on surface area contact. Remember, flow foam is the same material as diaper elastic. So when you push it into the court, it's going to conform all the way around your foot onto that court. So as long as it's got good contact, you're going to get excellent traction. Like I said, just make sure you watch out for dust on them. Now on the outsole durability test, obviously on these with a durometer in the single digits, you know, the burr just rips right through this. So, you know, these are indoor shoes for sure, both rubberized and hardwood courts, they do absolutely fantastic on. And in terms of its speed, it did come in at a 2.7 on the speed ratio. I found that these things were much faster after break-in. At first, they did, like I said, the uppers just felt a little bit stiff to me, and so I wasn't super excited about really pushing off and stopping and starting really hard on them. But then once they broke in, I found that they felt much similar then to like the Curry Flow 11s, the Spawn Flotros, especially with the ergonomics of them. Like they really are meant for bounding down a court, right? They are meant for easy, kind of springy type feelings, really easy for like quick step backs, things like that. And they do get off the blocks incredibly quick once they're broken in. So I think for speed, I think that 2.7 is pretty appropriate. Like I said, after you give it an hour, hour and a half of break-in. The fit of the Future Elites is very forgiving. Now, even though its length and width measurements are pretty standard, you know, pretty, you know, true to size, because the uppers, like I said, are just so easy to get along with. I'd say a narrow and medium foot, you can go down a half size. You want that one-to-one real intimate contact. A 2E for me, I went true to size. I was fine in these just because I could expand them. And that is nice because then a 2E can get true to size, get the weight reduction, things like that. So I think a 4E up one half size in these. Other than that though, because of the knit uppers, how the lace line goes, I don't know, a 4E, I'm not sure I'd want to go up more than a half size on these. In terms of the snake bitten foot though, because that stack of flow foam in the heel is just so substantial, and you got that little more dense stuff in the midfoot of the shoe. Plantar fasciitis, bursitis, ball of foot pain, this thing is just so forgiving. Plus, the shank in these things is so good for something like big toe joint arthritis, you know, really anything arthritic in the forefoot, you know, just arthritic hammer toes, things like that. These things are just absolutely phenomenal. Plus, they'll accommodate really any lumps or bumps in the forefoot. So I think, to me, these are one of the better shoes out there for forgiveness underfoot, right? Because it is a more knit upper in there. Something with Achilles tendonitis, really even plantar fasciitis, really anything torsional. If you put an orthotic in this, it really bumps it up into that elite territory. Because like I said, the uppers do allow a lot of movement, but sometimes for torsional things, that's not the best in the world. However, because these are so stable of a base on the shoe, if you can get that heel in a cup of something, it really holds you planarly. And then, you know, the pods are gonna hold your ankle in. I think then these kind of bump up to the elite territory for those torsional type issues as well. What was undoubtedly my favorite part of the Futr X Elite was its playability. These things were an absolute blast to play in. They were just so accepting of pretty much anything I wanted to do in them. They moved so easy from side to side. I really liked the way the uppers, number one, gave a little bit, but they didn't buckle on me either, right? The flow underneath of it wasn't oriented, that it wasn't so unstable, right? So you could do a lot of interesting things in them and really not have too much of a concern about rolling or just, having a complete meltdown on the court. So I do think that, to me, this is more of an upgrade to the Curry 4 Flotro. I felt like these played similar, but I hate to say this because it sounds so cheesy and punny, but more flowing of a shoe. The uppers just felt a little bit easier to get from step to step. And like I said, I felt like I was just maybe doing more than I really was in these shoes, because like I said, they would just allow so much movement. But because of all the contact I was getting from them, I was getting a lot of tactile sensation back from them. And so I was just having a lot of fun, because also they get up off of blocks really easily. They get up into the air really easily. I mean, as easily as I get up into the air. But I just, like I said, in and around the hoop, just like doing my little circles that I do around the hoop all the time, missing shots until I make one for this video. But doing that just felt so much fun in these. And I know I've talked about that with certain shoes, that I'm just doing those circles and I don't really even feel like I'm doing them. This was one of them. I absolutely love the shape of this midsole and outsole. I just think that this is, if Under Armour is gonna do flow, I think this is kind of the way to go with it. Just make it like a giant boat around your foot, of security. But because flow is so responsive and energetic, you can get away with it, right? Versus some other foams, it's just gonna feel like it's dragging you into the floor. So I'd say for someone that wants all the tactile sensation of a booty liner shoe, more elastic upper shoe, but also wants that really explosive type movement of, a flow and a full length shank, this is a really fun pickup of a shoe. Like I said, it's not gonna be for everybody because of the knit uppers and how much expansion it does allow. But you just can't deny how fun these are to play in, and just a super fun shoe to have in your arsenal. So I would love to hear your thoughts on these down below, especially because there are a lot of kind of like these, quasi mids in the Under Armour range, right? Got the Curry 4 Flotro, the Spawn Flotro, now these, the Futr X Elites. Then also you got the lower top in the Curry line. So I'd love to hear your thoughts down below, what you think if you're picking these up or going somewhere else. And if you do want to see the older sibling to the Flow Futr X Elite, the Curry Spawn Flotro, make sure you click into this video up above and subscribe down below. Respect your rubber and foam, and as always, in every single Flow Foam video I do, diaper elastic. I'll see you somewhere in the Sneakerverse.